We're going to start out this screencast by creating a small text file. And it's a small text file containing the sentence, a small text file. And we'll save this into a location that we know. So I'm going to use C file and then call this small.txt, like so. Once we're done with that, I'll go ahead, and we need to remember that there's a single line of text in here. So we'll go ahead and we'll close this one down, and we're going to create a new project, and we're going to use the command line app template, and we're going to call this finally example. So inside of our small project here, we're going to go ahead and create a new class, and we're going to call this class FileReader. Now we'll provide FileReader with a single method, public void read file, and this takes as argument a string with a path to the file that we want to read. Inside of this method here, we're going to create a new file object, and we're going to pass it the path that is specified through the method call. We of course need to remember to import this. We are then going to use a scanner to try and read from the file object that we've created. And we're going to do that inside of these try branches here. And the reason that we're going to do that is because we know that scanner can yield a file not found exception when trying to read from a file that does not exist on the path specified in the path passed to the file object. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say s equals new scanner, and we're going to provide it with the file object. And here we see that it yields a red line, and that's because we need to catch the checked exception, file not found exception, ex, system out println, and we're just going to tell the user that the specified file does not exist. In here we're going to try and read from the file. Normally what we would do is we would use a while loop to read from the file as long as the scanner is able to read something, but nobody is forcing us to do that. So what we can do is we can say system out println, and we're going to say s dot next line. And we're going to do this twice. This means that aside from the fact that this is very bad programming, what we're forcing this method to do is to read exactly 2 lines from a text file. This means we cannot read more and we cannot read less either. We'll come back to that. So one of the important things when working with external resources is that we need to release them once we're done with that. And when we're using them in a scanner, what we'll do is we'll call the close method on the scanner object. So if we go into main now, and we choose to create a new file reader object, oops, not a new file, a new file reader, and we don't need this one. And then we say read file and pass it a path to the file that we created before. And we need to escape the backslash here, remember that. We put it in a folder called file, and we called it small.txt. Now, if we go ahead and run this program, what we'll see is we'll encounter an exception. And the exception that we encounter is the no such element exception. And this seems strange because we did this within the read file method had a try catch statement, but remember that the try catch statement only catched the checked file not found exception. This actually means that our program crashes, and it crashes exactly in this line when we're trying to read something that does not exist. We'll notice here that it actually prints out the first line of text in the file, and then it yields an exception on the line that we are at here, line 17. This means that we'll never reach the close statement of our scanner, and we cannot be ensured that our resources has actually been released. While there are few ways to fix this, what we're going to use here is the finally statement to ensure that close is always called on our scanner object. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a finally statement down here. And the thing with the finally statement is that we're sure that regardless of the fact that something, a runtime exception, may happen up here, or some kind of unchecked exception at least, may happen up here, we're sure that the code down here in finally is still executed. So down here we can put the is.close, and we can validate that this actually happens by the fact that we can go up here and say system out println, and we can say that finally has been executed. Now here it says to us that we cannot be sure that the scanner up here is not a null reference, and we can fix this through a little hack by adding an actual null assignment to the scanner object, and then it lets us do this down here. We could also have created this one, or actually we could have created this one inside here, but then we wouldn't be able to fetch it down here finally. So this would be the viable option to avoid the issue with the possible null pointer exception. So notice this is a small hack, and if we wanted to be sure to avoid any kind of problems, we would need to enclose the call to the close method with a small if statement checking for null values. Nonetheless, here we go, and we'll try and execute the program, and as we can see, the finally statement was executed, shown by the finally has been executed text, and we see that the exception is still thrown. This also shows us that we have successfully released the resources.